Hey guys, I'm just shooting this video here totally impromptu as I am in a hotel room in Singapore getting ready for this event that's going to be happening here on Saturday. So you're going to have to forgive the terrible lighting, the terrible sound quality and everything else. But I wanted to get this out there because I'm building something super cool that you guys may be able to find very useful as well. And what I'm going to call this is the ultimate buddy accountability system. All right, so why is that important? Why would having a buddy accountability system be so tremendously important? Why would I put so much emphasis on that? Well, to understand that, I've got to tell you a bit of a story. So bear with me here. I'll get through this as quick as I can, but you really got to know the background of this to really understand. And I think that you'll be able to resonate with this because this is something that we all have experienced. It is something that has derailed all of us, and it is a way of keeping yourself on track. And if you can keep yourself on track in the right way, it can make an enormous difference in your life. Think about it, right? You know, if you have the right habits, you know, your life can go off in this wonderful, beautiful direction. And if you have the wrong habits, or if you fall off the right habits, it can go off in this completely different direction. So you got to be thoughtful about this stuff. You got to be thoughtful about what those habits are. And you've also got to be very thoughtful and diligent about ensuring that those habits stay in place. And one of my favorite joinerisms, if you will, is that habits are like earning compound interest on your time. Think about that, right? So here's a little bit of the backstory. So you may remember a while ago I posted on Facebook a question. I was telling people, hey, you know, I've been kind of actually in relatively quiet non-public life for the last 10 years or so, nothing compared to, you know, when I was going great guns, inventing all of the stuff for which people call me the godfather of internet marketing and all that jazz. Since then, I've you know, my life has been kind of quiet. I haven't been as public. You know, my Facebook has just been kind of random and fun, experimental and all of that. And, you know, I'm getting ready to go back into public eye again in a larger way. And I just thought I would ask, you know, a lot of my friends, since I'm friends with so many extremely brilliant marketing minds and business minds and personal development minds, what kind of advice do you have for me? And some of the advice was profoundly good, right? Not all of it was. All of it was well intentioned. It was great. And by the way, I appreciate all of the advice I got from everyone. Some of the most significant of it came from one of my students, Russell Brunson, and one of his students, Justin Brooke, you know, who's also, you know, subsequently ended up being a fan of some of my stuff. So it's kind of poetic, by the way, that, you know, here I am, you know, with this next phase of my life, learning from, you know, my students. I love the poetry of that. I think it's beautiful. And I think if you can get to a point in your life where you can subdue the part of your ego that will prevent you from being able to learn in such situations, the benefits can be quite enormous. Now, the trouble was the stuff that they were suggesting, it kind of implied a lot of work. There's some rather substantial change I'm going to have to make. Now, serendipitously, it turns out that a week before this event, another good buddy of mine, Stuart Tan, one of the greatest NLP trainers alive out there, if not the greatest, he and I set up 5 days where he and I could work on each other. He, over the course of 5 days, was going to give me a private one-on-one NLP master certification, and I was going to work with him on improving his business model and solving, you know, the kind of business problems that I solve for people, you know, on a strategic level, on a personal level and whatnot. And we have finalized that today, and it was just fantastic. You know, we came across some great things that we identified for each other. For example, for Stuart, I recommended some of the stuff that any of you guys who have dove deeply into my work would not be too unfamiliar with. You know, if you've gone into Fire Mission Academy, or if you use the business growth habit, or, you know, if you understand the concept of HighMe, and, you know, if you really understand the exponential power of these things, right? You know, if you understand how doing them habitually can turn a 16x linear improvement into a 256x exponential improvement if you do it in the right way. But doing it in the right way means that you have to have a solidified habit. Now, inside the Fire Mission Academy, we set up triggers for people so that they can keep these things habitual, and the training system is designed to keep people on track with that. Now, there was a little bit of additional complication here. So I designed for Stuart a couple of unique, I'll just call them cycles, improvement cycles that were specific to his business, right? And that's part of the beauty of what the kind of work I would do with someone one-on-one. Fire Mission Academy is a great one-size-fits-all solution that will help any business get to this exponential growth curve. But, there are some additional things that you might want to consider for your particular business model. In kind, Stuart gave me some things that I need to be working on a regular basis. So, when we came to a good end point on this, when we realized, hey, we both know what we need to do from this point forward, I said, well, okay, here's the real kicker. Here's the icing on this lovely, healthy, non-sugary cake that we have baked for each other. The icing is, how are we going to keep each other accountable on doing these things on a regular basis? Because it would be a real shame if we went to all this trouble to teach each other all these things, but we didn't set up the habitual framework to ensure that we kept each other on track with this stuff. So he asked me, he said, well, is there something inside Simpleology that would allow us to do that? And I said, well, I'm glad you asked. There is a way to use some tools inside Simpleology that will allow us to do just that. It will keep us totally accountable. And once we set this system up, it will be totally automated. And there's no running and there's no hiding. We have to do it. We'll know very, very plainly whether or not we are both living up to the standards that we have set for ourselves and the promises that we have made for each other. We'll know whether or not we are keeping these habits intact. And anybody who's worked with me directly knows that I am very, very. I like to give very clear instructions. I give you a very clear pathway of improvement, and I put a tremendous amount of emphasis on the daily habitual part of this. This is why when I do these wake up videos, I talk about how I do it right after I do my morning sunrise routine. Right, all of that is routine because the habits and the routines that you choose for yourself are going to have probably the biggest impact on your life than anything else. So it's really cool. What I decided was I was going to shoot him a little video showing him how to do this, but then I thought, what, why don't I just shoot this for everybody so everybody can benefit from this? So next week, when I get back from this seminar, and I get to work on some of the great advice that guys like Justin Brooke and Russell Brunson and so many other folks have been giving me, I will have a framework now that is going to keep me absolutely on track with all of this stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you guys inside Simpleology, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how you can set this up for yourselves. And here's what I recommend you do. Find an accountability partner, all right? Pick some habits that you guys want to keep yourselves accountable on, tag them in this post, and then come back every day and then report on this post. Have you been keeping each other accountable? Use Simpleology systems, as I'll be showing you here in a second, to keep yourselves accountable. But come back here and report on the post. Why? Because once you start posting about this publicly, then you guys are making public promises, and it adds just a little bit of extra pressure, all right, to ensure that you guys do this, because that public pressure kind of makes it harder for you to wiggle out of it, right? And then when you do falter, it's okay. You might have some people on the thread coming back in and encouraging you to get back on track. It's pretty cool. And I think if we all do this together, we can create this kind of massive vortex of positive energy that's getting us all moving forward on our positive, healthy habits. So let's go ahead and dive in to Simpleology right now, and I'll show you guys really quick how to set this stuff up. And it might take a minute here to set it up, but once you have it set up, it's set up forever. And then you just leave it running, and it will keep you on track for good. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, guys, let me show you how simple and easy this is. Now, I am logged into a dummy test account here inside just a Simpleology demo account. You guys can find this stuff just by going to my.simpleology.com. If you don't have a Simpleology account yet, you can set up a trial account at simpleology.com. And I'm going to show you a very, very simplified way of doing this. There are very, very complex ways that you can do this, but I'm going to start out with the simplest bare bones version, and I'll tell you why here in a second. There is a reason why I recommend starting out with something super duper simple. Now, all you got to do is when you log in, you could ignore the rest of the tools here for now, but for now, just click on Systems. And you're going to notice here in the beginning that you're going to get this demo video. And I do recommend you watch this demo video. It's going to show you some of the nuance of Symbology systems and some of the cool stuff that you can do. There is some very sophisticated, very complex stuff you can do inside Symbology systems. You can use this to manage business systems of really limitless complexity. But for our purposes right now, we're just going to be talking about setting up a very, very simple system that'll take us just a quick minute here to set up. So you don't have to worry about that. But I do recommend watching the video, and I do also recommend reading this little comic book that we're referencing down here called Why Things Suck. This little comic book will help you understand the importance of systems theory probably better than anything else I could show you, because it is a profoundly important concept. If you have not adopted systemization inside your business or inside your life, it will, I think, give you a very profound nudge to do so. It will explain to you how that's going to have some pretty profound ripple effects on your business, on your life, on just about everything. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to show you this little test system that I set up to show you how to do a buddy system. Okay, now, by the way, you can manage these inside folders. You can have folders with different systems inside them. There's a little system calendar. You don't need to worry about that right now. You might want to dig into that later. But when you start, you'll just click this Add System button. And let me show you what that's going to look like. So this here is a test account. Or a test system, and I'm going to go ahead and disable this so you can see how you actually build the system. So it's really simple. The first thing you do is it's going to ask you to plan the system, and it's going to ask you these questions. So why does this system exist? And so this one here says to keep me and Kirk accountable on our Wim Hof breathing. So this is a little fantasy system here where Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk decide, hey, you know what, man, we both want to start doing Wim Hof breathing. Let's keep each other accountable on that. So this could be any task. It could be like, hey, let's both decide to take a 5-minute walk every day. Let's both decide to do just one push-up every day. Let's both decide to start my day inside Simpleology every day. Whatever it is, something very simple, very, very easy. And I'll tell you a story here in a minute as to why I think you should start out with something simple and easy. Stuart Tan and I are going to be setting up some rather complex ones for each other, but that's because our personal development and our personal discipline is developed up to a point where we can handle that. But let's say, maybe you're someone who has bad habits right now. Nothing wrong with that. I have totally been there. If any of you guys know my personal history, you know that you've probably seen some pictures of me where, I let my life get really sloppy. After I experienced a lot of great success, I went through some years there where my habits were sloppy. I was fat. I was, drinking lots of wine, eating lots of unhealthy food, and I had a double chin. And you see me now, I'm flipping around on gymnastic rings and doing MMA fighting and doing calisthenics and doing all kinds of crazy stuff with my body. But it started with tiny little habits, and it had to be consistent. It had to be persistent. Okay, so this is why setting up systems like this are so important, because that consistency is key. Okay, now the second question we're going to ask here is, when do you use this system? And I just wrote down every day. Again, this is free form. You write whatever you want on this, but you want to write this stuff correctly. Then it says summarize the system in 1 or 2 sentences. And then for this one, I wrote, Kirk reports to me every day if he did his Wim Hof breathing. Now I'm writing this from Mr. Spock's account, so I'm writing it from the voice of Mr. Spock. So then you just click next, and then you set up the system. Okay, now you'll notice here that this one is pre-set up. We're not going to get too deep into this, but you can do automatic systems or on-demand systems. on-demand systems are going to be useful for businesses, for things that you want to systemize that you do on occasion. There are certain things that you might want to systemize that you don't do every day or regularly, but you want to do them on demand, right? This one is just going to be automatic, and you'll notice there are a lot of options here. It could be every week, every month, every year, every weekday, every other day, every day. You customize this any way you want. Okay, so for this one I just put every weekday. And then, what I did is I just, you would just write in the task here. The task was report to Mr. Spock that you did your Wim Hof breathing. And then who? You delegate it to somebody. Now, I delegated it to myself because we don't have a fake Captain Kirk in there yet. And then when is it due? And then we put same day delegated. Now, by the way, you can add comments and attachments, and you can add subtasks to this. And there's all kinds of more complex stuff you can do with these systems here. I won't get into that now. There are little triggers that you can set up. There's all kinds of cool things, but let's keep this simple, because maybe, you want to set up an accountability system with a buddy right now that's just like, hey man, you know what? Let's both do a 5-minute walk every day, and let's keep each other accountable, right? So we click next. And by the way, there's a little tick box here. It says send a reminder when the task becomes overdue. If your buddy is not keeping up his end of the bargain, it's going to send you a reminder inside Simpleology, so you can go, hey buddy, what's going on? You're not keeping up your end of the bargain. Let's get back on track, right? This is the whole purpose of this, because we are going to fall off track, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and click next, and then we can activate this system. That's it. Okay, so it's this simple, guys. Now, and by the way, we can click this little tick box here and delegate the first task. Now we just boom, we activate the system. And that's it. It's done. Now this is going to run automatically every day. So every time you do start my day, this is going to start showing up as a delegated task. Okay, it's really beautiful. So now when Captain Kirk, or in this case me, when I log in, I'm going to get this task sent to me every day that says report to Mr. Spock that you did your Wim Hof breathing. And again, this is going to be customizable, for however you do it. It could be, that you did your 1 push-up today or whatever it was. Now, let me tell you why I think you need to do this with something very simple, and why you need to report to people about this publicly. This is why I said, on this video, hey, comment on this post when you guys do your stuff. Why is that? Okay, so 2 things. One is, let me tell you a story about a guy I knew. He was a hairdresser, and this was back when I was young, crazy punk rock kid with punk rock hair, and this guy used to do my hair. And this guy had, now that I don't have hair, I obviously don't need that. I shave my head every morning all by myself. But back then, this guy would give me the crazy hairstyle that I needed, back when I was, a young rebellious teenager. Now this guy, when I first met him, was quite obese. And then over time, I started to notice him slimming down. And, at one point I said, you know what, man? I said, you are way thinner and fitter now. What did you do? And he said, Mark, it's the craziest thing. I just did 2 things. I stopped going to fast food, and instead of driving to work every day, I started walking to work every day. And then after I did that for a couple months, I started feeling like, you know what? I think I'm ready for a little bit more. So if your accountability buddy and you start out with something really simple like this, like even just a 5-minute walk or just 1 push-up, you're gonna find that hey, you know what? This isn't actually all that hard. And then after a while, you're gonna want to push each other to do a little bit more. You might talk to your accountability buddy after a few weeks and go, hey, you know what, man? Let's crank it up to 2 push-ups. Let's crank it up to 10 minutes. Let's crank it up to something else. Now, I can tell you, from personal experience, that this approach has had a profound impact on my life. This has turned me into the man I am now. It has changed me from somebody who had terrible habits to somebody who has impeccably good habits and who is wanting to improve them on a regular basis. Now, the public accountability thing is important as well, because if you get out there and you report it on a day-to-day basis, for example, on that post, you're going to be coming in, and you're going to have other people who will notice whether or not you are staying up on your promise. and you're going to get some nudges from people, right? And you're also going to get encouragement from people too, because every time you post, hey, you know what, I did it, and then your accountability buddy comes in and says, yep, I did it today too, woo, high five. And then you might see some other people, giving you some love on those posts, and giving you encouragement. And the more people we get involved in this, we create this awesome vortex of positivity and encouragement where we just push each other to get better and better. Now, last thing I want to tell you about this is, you have a choice right now, okay? I want you to project yourself out into a future where you make this tiny change right now. Project yourself out into 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. If you start down this path of just one push-up, 5 minutes, whatever it is, right? Where are you going to be 5 years from now? Look at me now, 10 years later, when I had the double chin and was obese and was, sick and tired and could barely, muster up enough energy, to get out of bed every morning and look at where I am, right? Now, compare that to where I would have been had I continued down that path. I would have been more obese. I would have been sicker. Who knows? Maybe I would have had a heart attack by now. I have no idea. I want you to project yourself down those two potential paths. Right now, in this moment, you have the choice to decide which of those paths you will walk, okay? Do your future self a favor right now and choose.